All right, let's give it 30 seconds more and then we can get started. We'll try to follow questions in the chat during the presentation, but we will do a longer Q&A at the end. If a question takes some time to answer, I might just keep it for the end of the presentation instead. All right, let's get started. So hello, everyone. My name is Matt. I'm a support engineer and consulting engineer with the ZK framework, and I'll be teaching you today about how to build an intuitive UI for your ZK application using both ZK component and Keikai. Let's get started. First of all, what is Keikai? Keikai is an additional library that you can add to a ZK project. It's a plugin, so it will be designed to automatically integrate with ZK. It will add a number of components and utilities. Most notably, it adds the spreadsheet component to ZK, which lets you display a spreadsheet in your web page, in your ZK web page. In the same way that you would use, for example, Excel or Lotus Note or other open office spreadsheet software on your local machine, you will be able to use that spreadsheet in a ZK page. We'll go over a few examples later. The experience of using Keikai can be anywhere between the full spreadsheet experience with all of the control, the addition capabilities, the manipulation of cell, to a very narrowed down experience where you will use the spreadsheet capabilities in the background, but won't give a lot of option to the end user to control it. In our case for today, we're going to want to see how we can combine the spreadsheet capabilities with ZK components and get the best of both worlds in this case. So why would you use web spreadsheet? Essentially, the answer there is, why would you use spreadsheet in general? I'm sure you've all had use cases where you had to do planning calculations, calculating the number of computers or software licenses or whatever you would need to have. And in order to exploit your data easily, you've made a spreadsheet to count it. Maybe you have a business report, maybe you have a loan calculation, maybe you have a budgeting spreadsheet, anything that would be expressed as an Excel spreadsheet can be expressed the same in a Keikai web spreadsheet, with the added benefit that it is running independent of the end user's client, and it is running in your application with your application context. Okay. The last thing you need to know about Keikai is Keikai basically is a ZK component. It's just a larger project, so it doesn't fit neatly as one of the component in default ZK. As a result, it's being published as a separate library that you can either add or not add depending on your need. And because it is essentially a large ZK component, if you already know how to do a page with ZK, you already know how to control the spreadsheet. You will have the spreadsheet component, you will have utilities, which let you interact with the model, and you will have all of the good stuff, event listeners, all of the API that you're familiar with ZK, and you will control it in Java code. Okay, so how do we run Keikai inside of a ZK page? First, we need to load the library. And in order to load the library, the easiest thing is to use either Maven or Gradle, depending on your project setup. And for that, as an example, in my current POM file, you will see that we're declaring the Keikai EX library. which is in the same way that ZK Max or ZK EX are the premium version of ZK. Keikai EX is the premium version of Keikai. There's also a community edition. Both are valid, but the Keikai EX is slightly more useful in terms of feature capabilities. So we're going to use this for the example today. Okay, so we're loading our Keikai EX dependency. If we need additional dependency, like the Keikai JSP, which let us load a Keikai component inside of a JSP page, or the Keikai PDF to export with PDF, etc., etc. All of those additional dependency can be added or not added as necessary. And once the project is set up, we can the Keikai website, download the jar manually, and then just add them to the project. Okay, we have a project with the Keikai library currently loaded. How do we use it? First, in Zool file, we can just use the spreadsheet component in the same way that you would use a list box or a border layout or a different component in ZK. You will simply be able to create a spreadsheet component. You can give attributes in the same way you would give attributes to other ZK components. And the more interesting one in here is the SRC, because the SRC let us specify a target spreadsheet document as the source for what we're going to display. So let's keep going on that. Just before we pass to the data type, let me just show you what this would look like. I have here a local spreadsheet, which is a simple calculation sheet. It does calculate the different value weighted by a multiplier. Just simple Excel formulas that takes value, transform them, and make them usable inside of the spreadsheet. When I go to my web page, it's going to look essentially like this. The goal here with Keikai is to take that document and to replicate it one-to-one in a web context, keeping all of the data, keeping all of the ability to do formula calculation, and keeping all of the formatting that might have been put on the original document. All right, so now let's talk about why we would want to map data to ZK component in addition to the ability to simply edit the value directly inside of the cell. Let's take a look. ZK brings a lot of added value in that type of workflow because Keikai itself has the double click of, oh, you lost the sound, and we had double click on bottom right corner of a cell, should copy the value to all cell. That's correct. That's one of the things you can do. It's not really on the scope of this presentation. That's mostly part of the nature of the spreadsheet display as a spreadsheet editor. It's something you can do both in client or in Keikai. Okay. But this will replicate just value. It will not necessarily help with formula calculation if you need to do a cell by cell calculation in this case. It can help copy the same formula, just depending on your spreadsheet setup. It sometimes does things that you might not expect. Okay, let's talk about the ZK component and data type mapping. So as I was mentioning, the Keikai is going to give the end user the same experience in the browser as they would have when entering data in the same spreadsheet in their local client. Either Excel or OpenOffice or whichever local client they might be using. ZK, on the other hand, has a lot more different controls that you can add to your web page, and that can be used in conjunction to Keikai. Let's say, for example, you want to input a number and you want to give, in addition to typing the number directly, you want to give the opportunity to the end user to input that number in a more interactive fashion. Maybe you want to give them a set of pre-selected value. Maybe you want to give them a spinner in order to quickly change up and down values instead of just having to type with keyboard. Maybe you need to input a date, in which case you might consider the ZK datebox or calendar. Maybe you want to have an interval of value, a min and a max, that are depending on possible value on your backend. In this case, ZK has a range slider. Maybe you want to let the user write down and sign the document. ZK has a signature component. There's just a lot of component versatility in ZK that you can apply to the spreadsheet. And let's go back to the example I was showing you earlier. In this example, I've already pre-mapped some ZK component to the cells that have a green border. So for example, this first cell here is a percentage. It's possible for me to just type the percentage value, 50%, 20%, 15%. Oh, that's a bit more, 15%, not 100%. I can just type this manually. However, because I have a ZK component mapped to a click handler, I can also use a ZK slider, for example, to get 90% in this one, or to get from 10 to 25% in this one. The slider in this case provide a different input. It doesn't replace the text input value. It just adds either a more clear way to see the possible min and max value, or a more abstract way which only use the mouse and doesn't require the user to go back to keyboard in order to input that value. Same thing for the point. Do we have feature for double click bottom right corner of cell? Do you mean in Keikai? That might go to the question at the end, because it's really not in this topic, but we will talk about it in the end. Is that okay? Okay. Then yeah, if you have a simple point count and you want to quickly add a few points, you can use a spinner to just quickly update a value, taking the previous value and either adding or subtracting increments quickly in it. I mentioned that maybe you will have the need to put a date, in which case ZK calendar is a great way to visually obtain a date. And then, since this is a date in your Java composer, you will be able to use that date inside of a different cell, for example. And I mentioned ZK, for example, have a signature component. If you want to have the end user put a digital signature on their object, they can do it. And because this is also going as a spreadsheet element, it will be stored in the spreadsheet if I were to, for example, print it or export it later. Okay, so that's a good overview of why you would want to add ZK component on top of the Excel behavior. Now, let's quickly talk about mapping data type to ZK component and why you should think carefully to which object you will want to map to which ZK component. So for example, here I have a user request, which is a value that goes from 0 to 100 and increments in values of 1. Since it's a spreadsheet, the user can already type in the value directly in the cell. but we also want to give them an additional way to select a value to make it convenient for them if they don't want to go back to keyboard or if they need some additional visualization, any sort of use case. So I've prepared three choices of ZK component that you would that could be used to fulfill the exact letter of that request. One of them is a slider, one of them is a spinner, and one of them is just a list of every number from 0 to 100. One of these options is a good choice. Two of these options, not so much. So in this case, a slider is a good choice. It's intuitive, it's visually efficient. It tells you exactly where you are from the minimum to the max in just a glance. And from the end user point of view, they don't have to do many actions to use it, only one click and drag. And most users will understand the concept of a slider immediately when they see it. Spinner in this case is not a great choice. Spinner can be a great choice for another use case. I've just shown you the addition or subtraction of points in an existing value, for example. Great choice for spinner. But to choose a number from 0 to 100, it's just text, and we already have just text in the cell anyway. And no one will want to click 100 times to just select a value. So while the component itself may have a good use case, that's not one of them. And lastly, that list of 100 potential number, it's a bad choice as well because it's not intuitive. It's hard to read. It's hard to use. There might be use cases where we would want a drop down like this that give a choice through a list of options. We're going to see one of those later, but this one is not one of them. Okay. So how do we implement this in ZK and Keikai? Let's take a look at the code. So I've already shown you the original spreadsheet document that I have here in Excel. The first step of designing a screen that uses Keikai most of the time is to design the underlying spreadsheet. And you can design it in Keikai. Of course, you can also design it in your underlying desktop client. So in this case, I'm using Microsoft Excel as my desktop client, but any client that can create an XLS or XLSX document will do in this case, because we only need the document to be imported in Keikai at the end. So how do we design this document? First, we want to make it clear what is a calculated zone. So in this case, the gray area will be calculated zone. We want to make it clear what is in input zone. So in this case, everything that I've added a green border to would be a zone that the end user can click in order to do something with it. And we want, in addition to that, to make it easy for the Keikai component at server side to either put or retrieve value in specific fields. One very useful way we can do that is to use a named range. Keikai can do things, for example, selecting the cell A1 or C2 or L6. It's possible to do it by pure coordinate like this. But a much better way to do it is to create what we call named range. When you select a cell or a group of cells, you can give a name to that range of cell. And each of those names here will have different names which can be retrieved from the Keikai API in order to either read data or to write data into the relevant cell in the sheet. So let's review this. What do we want in order to make a good Keikai screen? We want a design that is clear and easy to read for the end user. We want to mark the user interactable field, the field that we will add some behaviors on to be clicked in the web page when the user does an action. We want to use a named range in order to automatically track targets. And we want to use formula to automatically calculate stuff that doesn't need to be done in Java code, like addition, multiplication, sum, everything that uses a formula in the spreadsheet can be used in this way. Okay, so that's the client part of thing, the spreadsheet. How do we then put that into a Java composer and do actions on it? Let's take a look at that piece of the code. Composer is a concept that you're probably already familiar with if you've worked with ZK in the past. Composer will let you wire components, do actions on those components, and then listen to events that happen on those components. In this case, we have wired a spreadsheet component, which is the component we've declared in Zool here. The spreadsheet component is the main bread and butter of the Keikai API. It's the component that visually in your end page is going to contain that spreadsheet that the user is going to be interacting with. In this case, my page only contains a spreadsheet, so you can see that everything that is on screen in this page is the spreadsheet component. What are we doing then? I mentioned just a minute ago that Keikai has the ability to retrieve cells of or group of cells by their named range. In this case, I'm using the Keikai utility ranges, which contains a number of utilities to either retrieve data, write data, modify the state of a given cell or range based on the coordinate of that range or based on its name. In this case, I've been using all of the names that you can see here, which are all of the names I have created in my Excel document previously. Using that API, I'm going to retrieve and store the ranges in all of those variables, which are going to then make it easy for me to wire events based on those ranges and the cells that are located in this range. How do I do that? I have here a listen annotation. Listen is an annotation you should also be familiar with if you work with ZK Composer before. It lets you declare an event type that you want to listen to on a given component. In this case, the component is my spreadsheet, and the event type is cell click. So every time the user is clicking on a cell, I will listen to, every time the user clicks on a cell, I will listen to that event, and I will do something if I am in the relevant range. I'm going to use a range helper method, which is part not of the API, but part of this demo project. You will have access to the demo project if you want to see how it is built. And if the cell that I have clicked is in the given range, then I will do an action based on the given range that I'm looking at. If the cell is in the range KPI, I'll do a context to search KPI. If the range is team range, for example, this, I will do a team range call, etc., etc., etc. Simple ZK event listening. The interesting thing is what is happening inside of each of these event listeners. I'm going to skip on this one because it's slightly more complicated, and I'm going to go to an easy one. For example, the context pop-up date picker. The context pop-up date picker here will trigger when this cell here is clicked. So what are we doing when this cell is clicked? First, because we are in a ZK composer, we can just create ZK component. In this case, I'm creating components inline with just a call to new pop-up directly in Java code. But because I am in a ZK context, I could do executions, get current, create component. And I could use, for example, a ZUL file or a stored component definition to create a more complicated pop-up that I've already stored previously from a pop-up definition located somewhere in my package or generated by a different piece of code. In this case, we're doing a simple example, but you can make it as rich and as detailed as you would need for the use case. Okay, what am I doing here? First, I assign my pop-up to the page. Then I create a ZK calendar, and I put the calendar into my pop-up. I also, and that is very important, I add an event listener to the calendar in order to listen to the onChange event whenever onChange is being triggered on the calendar, meaning every time the change event when I click a date in the calendar is triggered at client side, I will trigger this piece of code inside of the event listener. In this case, we're using a Lambda expression in order to just inline the event listener, but we could create it manually by doing new event listener, or we could even generate it from a different method. There's a lot of possibilities to generate those event listener. We're going to stay on the simple side for this training. Just know that you can make it as detailed and rich as you would be able to do in any other ZK context. Okay, so we add our event listener to do something when the calendar date is clicked. We add the calendar to the pop-up, and then we open the pop-up on the client at the coordinates of the mouse. Very simple. Click on it, pop-up is open at the coordinate of the mouse. Click on the date, and then we're going into this piece of code. We're going to receive an onChange event from the calendar. The calendar is, of course, available to us here because we've declared it as a variable on the outer context of our Lambda. So we can simply retrieve the current date as the value from the calendar. And since we already have the target cell, which is retrieved by the range API, the target cell in this case is retrieved by finding the current sheet, finding the current row, the row that has been clicked when the event has been opened, finding the current column, and adding adding 2 to the column index, because in this case we're clicking on this cell, which is F16 when we are triggering the event, but we are writing into this cell, which is a merge cell on H16. So FGH is an extra index of 2 to find the columns on which we want to actually write. Because we're not replacing this field, we're writing to a field which is just next to. Okay, and at the end, after we've written the value inside of that cell that we've retrieved here, we close the calendar and we put back the focus into the main spreadsheet. Okay, so fairly simple ZK event listening. If you've worked with calendar, those concepts should be fairly reasonable, with the only new thing here being the range API to find a cell, and the fact that we're going through a new component, which is the Keikai spreadsheet instead of ZK list box or ZK vlayout or ZK border layout or any other ZK component that you might have used in the past. All right, let's keep going. I've already talked right now about component handling. So just quickly for review, spreadsheet is just a component. You can listen to user actions on the spreadsheet. In this case, we're using left click, but you can use left click, right click, double click. You can listen to cell being edited. You can listen to focus being put on the spreadsheet or focus being taken out of the spreadsheet. All of the good stuff that you can do in ZK events, you can do in a spreadsheet event as well. Using the range API to retrieve cell and values, as I mentioned, you can retrieve a cell by simply querying the spreadsheet with a range name. You can retrieve a cell by querying the spreadsheet with coordinates A12, B17, etc., etc. And you can also use relative position of cells. You can find the cells that is located 2 columns to the right. Apologies, it seems my headset just went asleep. You can find the cell that is located 2 columns to the right of a given cell, for example. Okay, component wiring. I've gone quickly on this one because ZK components are Java object. You can use user actions on ZK component. So in this case, the on change event on a calendar, the on scroll event on a slider. You can use the on change event on a spinner, extra. All of those things that you already do in a normal ZK page, when you map a ZK component to be a supplemental control to enter something in your spreadsheet, you can use it all the same because it's all the same ecosystem in the end. Okay, let's go slightly deeper. There is one control that I've not introduced in that example, and it is right here. In this column, I have a control that does a little more than simply setting values directly. Like this spinner is just setting a number directly. This slider is just setting a person value directly. All of those are fine. But here we have a component that is a little more complicated. Here I have a Searchbox. Searchbox is a ZK component that is designed to allow the end user to filter a large number of potential values by searching part of their string and then to select one of these. So for example, if I search with the letter A, I can have average revenue, average purchase value, average sale length. If I search from the letter S, I'll have sales growth, sales target, etc. All of those potential value are coming from a data layer that is one step removed from the composer. In this case, I'm going to choose sales growth and click away, and it's going to update my value in that specific cell. In this one, I will want, for example, average revenue. I'll select it, click away. That's the workflow I've chosen to do here. Of course, this is ZK component. You can listen to all type of events and make it as complicated or as simple as you need to be in this case. Why am I talking about Searchbox specifically? Searchbox here is using a model. My specific model is a list submodel. It's a list model with filtering, and Searchbox is specifically designed to allow you to create your own list submodels or to use the default list submodel implementation in order to have the ability to just type the start of a word, get all possible entries that match that specific search, and then select one of these. In this case, I've searched a list of KPI entries. You could be searching for a list of locations, or you could be searching for a list of team names, or you might be searching for persons in a company index. All of those things where typing them manually might create problem down the line because you really don't want to misspell a keyword in that type of situation. So you really want to have a component that does both searching, filtering, and selecting for you. How do we do this? So the logic is basically the same as the previous event listener I've been talking about. First, we receive a click event on a spreadsheet. That click event triggers the creation of a new pop-up. In that pop-up, we create a search box with a search model, which we get, in this case, I'm getting it from a simple data class, but in the real world, you would get it from database or from the business layer or from the company directory, whichever external data source you might be using in this case. And I transform it into a list submodel. I'm using here the default list submodel implementation, but you can make it more complicated by adding a list submodel comparator, which will let you do the comparison yourself instead of just using the direct to list submodel string comparison of objects. And lastly, you can also just implement your own list submodel that will do more complicated things for you. For example, let's say you have a data source with 100,000 entries. You don't really want to load your 100,000 entries from the get-go. Instead, you probably want to have a query or a query middleman like Hibernate do the query for you after the end user has already started to type one of those or two of those or three of those characters in order to get a shortened result from the get-go. In this case, you would implement your own list submodel implementation. We have documentation on the ZK website about that. Just search ZK list submodel and you will get there. Main point being, it's very flexible and you can do a lot of optimization for initial speed, for query speed, for narrow results, or anything else that match the requirement of a given page. Okay, so we have our search model. We put it into the search box, and we add the onSelect event to the search box, so that when the search box trigger onSelect at the end of the workflow, we will find the targeted cell, again by retrieving the cell with the range API, and set the value of that cell based on the value of the item that we've selected. Okay. Key concept on this one, Searchbox is a simple search and select component. It's extremely useful when you want to search a big amount of data with sublist model. It's very useful in order to avoid loading your entire query at the front of the operation. Instead, you can wait for the user to just start typing data, query data into the search box. Based on that search value, you can get data from your business layer, from your database, from your company directory, whatever makes sense here, and then display the result and have the end user just select one of those results in order to just end the operation. Okay. Sample for this training are available in GitHub. They are available in the Keikai DevRef project. You will have these slides at the end of the presentation when we make the training public. So feel free to visit this project and run it locally if you want to try and play with the samples that I've been presenting today. That's basically it. We're going to do Q&A. So there was a question earlier in chat about what can you do, for example, with the click bottom corner of the cell in order to just do. Keikai support ZK. Yes, ZK 7. Good question. I don't have the compatibility table in mind. We're going to check it in the documentation after I've gone into the previous question. So if you want some easy to run test of Keikais, just go to keikai.io/demo. Going to drop that link in the chat if you want to go and just try the component out for yourself. In this case, I'm going to the Excel-like demo, which is the first demo in the website. It gives you a short introduction of the standard way to use Keikai in a website. So I believe you were asking if you had the ability to do this, correct? Grab the bottom right corner of a cell and then drag it either down or right in order to copy the content. And if you have a formula in the cell, let's say going to put something like this, and put maybe something like this formula. Let's multiply it by 2. When you drag down, you're going to get basically the same behavior as you would have in Excel for this type of operation. Monica, was that the feature you were referring to, or were you talking about something else that you can do in Excel and that you wanted to know if it was also available in Keikai? If you're still there. Okay, and while you check this, I'm going to quickly go to the Keikai documentation. We also have a full documentation tutorial for Keikai right here. I'll also recommend this website in regard to yes, you also can have a collaborative mode. I'll give you a quick display of that after I mention the compatibility part. So yeah, here you have all of the Keikai information. I believe the ZK8 or later for Ice Blue. Actually, I don't have it in mind, the information of which minimum ZK version you need. So I'll make a note, Serum, and I'll give you an update a bit later by email to give you the full info, because I really don't want to give you an incorrect answer right now. I think it's just better if I verify and let you know. Okay, speaking of the collaboration mode, it's also a demo you can use in the Keikai IO/demo right here. If you go to the collaboration edit, in this case, we have collaboration edit inside of the same page, but it's just a mock-up of what you would have. In a real world scenario, you would have one screen, a person on their own screen, and another person on their own screen. You wouldn't have it in the same page like this. It's just to show you how it works. So in this case here, I'm in Steve's screen on the left, and I'm on Jimmy's screen on the right. When Steve is typing data, you can see that the data is automatically updated on the other people using the spreadsheet in collaboration mode at the same time. And you can see that similar to what you would see, for example, in Google spreadsheet, you will have a small square with the name of the person that is currently selecting a given cell being highlighted on each other's view. I hope that answered the question. You have tracking history on who has edited the cell in the past. That's not a default feature, but that's something you can do by simply using the Keikai API. You can listen to on cell change. You can listen to on cell edit. You can give a cell editable or non-editable status, and you would be able to build that feature directly in Java code. It's not a default feature, at least not that I'm aware of, but it's feasible. It's something you could do. Okay. The main topic for this presentation is mostly about integrating ZK components, the type of events that you could listen. If you have any question on Keikai, I'm very happy to keep going over this. But if you would also want to know more about the different ZK component that you can use in the workflow that I've introduced, I recommend going to the ZK components documentation, where you will actually find the entire list of components available in ZK. And essentially, you can build UIs with all of these in using the type of structure I've introduced today. So unless there is additional questions on either Keikai in general or the ZK workflow that I've introduced today, I'm going to give, let's say, an additional 1 minute until 5:47 to ask your questions. And then after that, I'm going to simply thank you everyone for being here. I hope you learned something interesting. I hope the manipulation of Keikai through the Java API was also interesting. And just thank you for joining me for this training. Okay. Then if there is no more question, I'm going to say have a good day, everyone. And hope you had a good time. All right. Then I'm going to end the recording and say have a good day, everyone. The recording and the slides will be made available publicly later. And if you want to try out the project, you can find it at the GitHub devref, as you can see on screen at the moment. Let me just copy this for you. This one is a direct link to the Zulfa I've been using for this training. I hope to see you in another training in the future, and have a good day, everyone.